Hello everyone, just wanted to let you know that with it being Easter weekend this week, Sight for White will be closed on Friday and Monday, but we will reopen as normal on Tuesday. I do hope everyone has a really lovely Easter break. Hopefully there will be a few Easter eggs enjoyed along the way, and most importantly, some nice time spent with family, friends, and having people around you. Easter's always a really lovely time of year as we move into the spring. The days are getting a bit brighter and it feels like everything is starting to wake up again after the cold winter months. I'm really looking forward to catching up with many of you from the following week when we reopen, whether that's when you pop into our site at Millbrook House or just visiting and passing by. It's always lovely to catch up and touch base with you all. Until then, I really hope you have a peaceful, enjoyable Easter weekend, hoping for some sunshine, and look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Take care and have a happy Easter, everyone.
Here is this week's charity news, week commencing 3rd of April. This week's charity news is a slightly short version due to the Easter bank holiday weekend, and no paper editions of local papers until tomorrow. Therefore, we'll be using articles from Isle of Wight County Press, Island Echo, Isle of Wight Radio and On the Wight online services.
There is no swimming at Medina on Monday due to school holidays. It will resume next Monday, April the 13th.
Tandem biking is starting once again now the weather's warming up and the sun is shining. If you'd like a go on a tandem, please do not hesitate to call the office and we can book a slot for you. The group meets on a Tuesday, although alternative arrangements can be made depending on volunteer availability.
God's Hill Coffee Morning will be on Tuesday the 7th of April at the Old Smithy, starting at 10:30am. Please pop along and chat with our wonderful volunteers, Linda and Yvonne.
Coffee and Chat is on Wednesday, starting at 10am until 11:30am. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. We will be joined this week by Cowes Indoor Bowls Club, who recently held a charity tournament for the charity and raised over £1,500, and are coming in to present the cheque. This is an amazing amount and we thank them for their generosity.
Mix and Mingle is on Thursday at Millbrook House. This group enjoys crafts, quizzes and entertainment. If you would like to put your name down on the list, please call the office.
Our first walk and talk is next Friday the 10th of April between Ryde Golf Club and Quar Abbey. The minibus will be leaving Millbrook House at 9:30am, picking up members at the Newport bus station at 9:45am, to start walking from the entrance of Ryde Golf Course, Binstead Road, at 10:15am.
We have a pudding and quiz evening on Friday the 17th of April, starting at 7 o'clock at Millbrook House. The cost is £5 per person with teams of 4 people. But don't worry about making a team, because when you come, you will be put with other people to make up a team.
Thank you everyone who's donated books. We have our 2 bookstalls filled with wonderful books at Tesco, Freshwater and Ryde, which are very successful. Please keep collecting books, as this helps raise valuable funds for the charity throughout the year.
This is the second part of the Talking News read by Lynn.
And by myself, John.
An Isle of Wight petrol station, Morrison's robbery prompts arrest. A 62-year-old man has been arrested following a robbery at an Isle of Wight petrol station. The incident happened at the Newport outlet of Morrison's petrol station in South Street around 7:20pm on Saturday, March the 28th. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary said a man approached a staff member, kicked him, knocking him to the ground before hitting him in the face and damaging his glasses. He then demanded that the till drawers be opened. After around 5 minutes inside the store, the man left carrying a bottle of whiskey, a packet of cigarettes and a bunch of flowers, none of which were paid for. The victim did not suffer any injuries. Police released CCTV images of a man they wished to identify, and the person has since been found. They are also asking for anyone who witnessed the incident or noticed anything suspicious in the area at the time to contact them. Information can be reported by calling 101 or via the Hampshire and Isle of Wight's constabulary website, quoting incident number 44 260 147 115. Anonymous reports can be made through Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111 or via their website.
Island Roads reports mildest winter in 13 years. Island Roads made 22 island-wide gritting runs this winter, marking what has been the mildest season in the 13 years the company has managed the Isle of Wight's highway network. Most of the gritting runs took place during the cold snap over Christmas Eve and the New Year, with crews working on consecutive days between December 24th and January 10th. Across the season, just under 370 tonnes of salt were spread to keep roads safe and accessible. By comparison, during the 2024-25 winter, gritters made 40 runs, depositing 830 tonnes of salt, while the previous season saw 32 runs, using nearly 479 tonnes. Despite the milder temperatures, the island experienced one of the wettest starts to a year on record, with the equivalent of 6 months' rainfall falling across January and February alone. Combined with freezing conditions, the heavy rain increased flooding risks and created ideal conditions for potholes to form. An Island Road spokesperson said, "While there have been fewer gritting runs this winter, the workload across the business hasn't eased. Between gritting and maintenance to tackle potholes caused by the unusually heavy rainfall, it's been another very busy winter season. I'd like to thank our winter maintenance staff for their dedication and hard work over the season, particularly as much of the required gritting took place in very cold temperatures, while most people were enjoying the Christmas and New Year period." Island Roads added that although the official winter season has ended, crews will continue to monitor forecasts and are ready to grit the network if unseasonably cold weather returns.
An Isle of Wight councillor questions the gap in food hygiene inspection rates. A quarter of premises up for a food hygiene review by the Isle of Wight Council last year were not inspected. Alliance councillor Paul Fuller has questioned why only 75% of businesses due an intervention were assessed in 2024-25. He asked the question at last week's 26th of March 2026 Environment and Community Protection Committee meeting. The Cowes West and Gurnard representatives said the inspections are supposed to be done quite often, and asked for a reason why there has been a delay. Rachel Briscoe, Team Manager for Business Regulation and Public Protection at the Isle of Wight Council, in response said, the local authority must balance resources and statutory demands. She also told the committee higher risk premises had a 100% inspection rate. Councillor Fuller also probed why it was not mandatory for businesses to put their inspection ratings on display. He added, if I want to eat somewhere, I want to know what they're going to give me. Ms Briscoe said, we need to balance resources and statutory demands. The Food Standards Agency, the FSA, would expect 100%. The premises are risk-based on their frequency, so a very high-risk premises would need inspecting every 6 months, and it goes down to a lower-risk premises that's expected to be inspected every 3 years. The higher-risk ones, yes, you will see 100% performance, but then it drops down to the lower-risk ones who are only achieving a lower percentage. When you look at it as a totality, it is that 75%. Responding to Councillor Fuller's second query, Ms Briscoe said she would love a mandatory display policy, but that power sits with the FSA. The council does, however, work to ensure businesses display the correct rating, the officer added.
Isle of Wight young performers shine at Theatre Awards. The island's rising stage stars were celebrated at the Isle of Wight Youth Theatre Awards 2025. Young performers were recognised for their standout work throughout last year, with 8 youth and school groups represented. Trophies were handed out for both productions and individual performances at Sunday's event. Judges said the standard had risen yet again, with more awards presented and a noticeable increase in young actors achieving bronze, silver and gold accolades. Well-established groups such as Theatre Train and Curtain Call Creative were among the winners, joined by newer companies including Raw Theatre Arts, the Knighton Playbox and Get On Stage. Students from Ryde School, the Bay CE Secondary School and the Isle of Wight College's Performing Arts Department also took home honours. Presenters included Island Theatre judges and several winners from the recent Adult Awards evening. Top awards went to Grease, produced by Curtain Call Creative, which was named Best Musical. Raw Theatre Arts took Best Play and Best Direction prizes for Burying Your Brother in the Pavement. And Knighton Playbox, Manners and Masquerade won Best Overall Show. Judges also praised young actors appearing in adult productions, including Island Savoyard's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Annie. The event was held at Ryde School's Jenny Kerry Performing Arts Centre, with 1-to-1 School of Motoring providing trophy sponsorship. As a special treat, a special video message to nominees by Ireland-born West End star Millie O'Connell was played.
Retired ferry life rings given new life at the zoo. The Cross Solent operator donated surplus equipment after routine safety upgrades, rather than sending the items to waste. Zookeepers then repurposed the rings into elevated feeders filled with treats, encouraging giraffes to stretch and forage naturally. Staff at Marwell say the animals have responded well, with the enrichment helping to keep them active and engaged. The zoo now plans to adapt more of the donated rings for other animals, including bongos, kudus and tapirs. Whitelink says the initiative is part of its ongoing efforts to reuse materials where possible, with previous donations supporting animal charities on the Isle of Wight. The company is encouraging other organisations who could make use of surplus equipment to get in touch.
Sex offender caught with indecent images just 5 months after conviction. 33-year-old sex offender Vincent Vella has pleaded guilty to 3 charges of possessing indecent photographs of children, including 100 of the most serious kind. Vella, now of Greenwood Avenue, Salford, but previously of Church Road in Wootton, was placed on the sex offenders register for 5 years in 2023 after he was caught by paedophile hunters attempting to meet who he thought were underage girls. As previously reported in October 2023, Vella avoided prison, receiving just a 2-year community order and a 5-year stint on the sex offenders register for his vile acts. Now, Vella has appeared back before the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court, where he pleaded guilty to possessing over 200 indecent images of children. The defendant was caught with the haul on 8th of April 2024, just 174 days after he was previously convicted. Vella was found to be in possession of 102 Category A images, including 7 of the most extreme kind, 88 cross Category B and 28 cross Category C, a total of 218. The convicted sex offender has been granted unconditional bail by the magistrates, with the matter committed to the Isle of Wight Crown Court for sentencing on 26 of June 2026.
Knighton and Whitwell Spring Show opens 160th anniversary year. Knighton and Whitwell Horticultural Society held its spring show on Saturday with increased entries and visitors to get their 160th anniversary off to a flying start. There was a marked increase in the number of floral art and handicraft entries and a 30% increase in the number of individual exhibitors with many new faces. Show Secretary Lindy Rhodes was delighted with the high standard of entries, which also impressed the judges across all categories. The Society works hard to encourage the next generation of growers, bakers and makers. Finley Newbury, aged 7, took prizes across both children's classes and for his entries in the adult classes. It is the show secretary's privilege to choose her favourite exhibit for special commendation, and this was awarded to Beryl Webster for a glorious floral tribute to the 160th anniversary. The September show will be held on Saturday, September the 12th.
Isle of Wight Medina Marching Band to join Top London Parade. Medina Marching Band is set to mark its 50th anniversary in style as it prepares to take part in the prestigious National Marching Music Day this summer. The Island Ensemble, established in 1976 by the late George Urry, will join top marching bands from across the country for a showcase of music, pageantry and tradition in the heart of London. Announcing the news, the band said, "We are proud Medina Marching Band Isle of Wight will be one of the official participating bands in this spectacular event. We can't wait to march right through the heart of London, including the Mall." The event on June 28th, during London Band Week, includes a Palace Parade review along one of the UK's most iconic ceremonial routes. Bands will depart at timed intervals from the eastern end of the Mall, stepping off from Admiralty Arch before proceeding along the Mall to Buckingham Palace and continuing along Birdcage Walk, concluding at the historic Horse Guards Parade. Medina Marching Band has grown into one of the country's foremost youth marching bands. Medina Marching Band is a youth marching band. It is a true military-styled marching band with a long-standing tradition, the band explains. The band's style is modelled closely on HM Royal Marines bands, featuring the unmistakable jackets, white helmets and caps that make them stand out from the crowd. Over its 50-year history, the band has won almost every major award available to youth marching bands in the UK. Looking ahead to the occasion, the band added, "It promises to be an incredible event in the heart of the capital." We are honoured to be part of such a prestigious event and to represent the Isle of Wight on this national stage. This year marks a significant milestone for Medina Marching Band, which has been part of the island's cultural landscape for half a century. Celebrating its golden anniversary, the group said, "We're thrilled to have been part of the marching band scene for 50 years, representing the Isle of Wight on the national and international stage. If you plan to travel to London to watch the event, it starts at 2 p.m.
Isle of Wight woman told she's lucky after 11 shop thefts. A prolific shoplifter who flouted an order to comply with the probation was told she was very lucky not to be jailed on the spot after racking up an extensive string of thefts. Jessica Vella of Wellesley Way, Newport, appeared for sentencing at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Friday, March the 27th. The unemployed 36-year-old admitted 11 charges of shoplifting and failing to provide a drug test while in custody. But the hearing was adjourned yet again after she failed twice to attend probation appointments for the preparation of a pre-sentence report. Items taken included bedding, clothing, sunglasses, shoes, toys, pet supplies, groceries and beauty products. Among the lengthy list of thefts were 2 separate incidents at TK Maxx on February the 1st and April the 26th last year, in which she stole bedding worth $34.99. On May the 29th, she twice targeted the same store, making off with bedding, towels and pet-related items totalling more than £330. She also stole £123.92 of goods from TK Maxx on September the 6th. Her offending extended across several other retailers. B&M in Newport was hit twice, on November the 23rd and this January, while Tesco Extra in Ryde reported the theft of food and household goods worth £63.39 on November the 13th. Matalan in Newport was targeted 3 times, once on October the 9th and twice on October the 22nd, with losses of at least £600 in clothing. While detained at Newport Police Station on October the 23rd last year, Vella refused to provide a sample for Class A drug testing.
Isle of Wight waste problems on George Street in Ryde. Waste collection problems from 37 different residential accommodations in just 4 townhouses are continuing to cause a headache in Ryde. Ryde Mayor Diana Conyers probed into when County Hall will address the rubbish issues outside 68 to 74 George Street at the Environment and Community Protection Committee on March 26. She said the current arrangements were causing a, quote, health hazard, unquote, and accused the local authority of being in breach of its own regulations. County Hall in response said that if Ryde Town Council secures the necessary planning approval and highway changes and builds a compliant bin store, it will instruct the waste service provider to collect from it. Councillor Conyers said, "Bins and gull sacks are left on the pavement and railings all the time, causing an eyesore and health hazard. This is in breach of your own regulations, which say that they can only be left out on the day of collection, and that landlords have a responsibility to provide adequate waste storage. There is a need either to enforce those regulations or to provide alternative storage facilities." Ryde Town Council receives constant complaints about this from local residents, and we've been trying to get something done about it for many years. Following a consultation we did with landlords and tenants, we've suggested several alternative storage options, and even offered to pay for these, but you have rejected our suggestions. Councillor Lucioni, Alliance representative for Ryde Monkton Meads said, "The council is aware of persistent issues with waste presentation at 68 to 74 George Street. These 4 former townhouses now contain 37 separate residential accommodations, made up of leaseholds, private rentals and HMIs. The buildings were not designed for this intensity of occupation and have no viable internal communal space for storing waste and recycling between collections. This creates challenges for consistent compliance with the council's waste presentation requirements. The local authority is not responsible for providing bin storage facilities on private land. To support compliance, the council has offered internal bins to all properties at 68 to 74 George Street, but no landlord or agent has taken up this offer, Councillor Lucioni said. These properties have animal-proof reusable sacks to present recycling and waste, and some keep these on the railings due to a lack of internal storage, she continued. County Hall has been clear that if Ryde Town Council gains the necessary planning approval and highway changes and constructs a compliant bin store, the local authority will instruct the waste service provider to collect from it, the chair added. Following up, Mayor Conyers said 66 George Street is the same sort of property and has landlord-provided storage to its rear, with compliance from residents. She asks, "I just want to know why the council can't take more action to make the other landlords or owners of the other buildings do the same." Natasha Dix, Service Director in Waste, Environment and Planning at the Isle of Wight Council, said, "The individual arrangements in the different buildings have different legal arrangements for ownership. So, if someone has the freehold of the whole building and the back garden, then they can make a bin store for all the tenants within it. But the different buildings have different ownership models within them, and that isn't always possible, where only the ground floor owner owns the garden. It would be up to them to decide if they wanted to give up their personal land for the other tenants. So it isn't, unfortunately, as simple as we would like it to be to insist on that provision."
The Shadow Transport Secretary slams the Isle of Wight ferry levy. Shadow Transport Secretary Richard Holden has slammed the government's levy on ferries as a tax on the Isle of Wight and promised robust policy on the ferries if the Conservative Party were to win power, in a visit to the island last week on Friday, March the 27th. The MP and Conservative frontbencher joined Isle of Wight East MP Joe Robertson in Ryde. He described the lack of exemption for the Isle of Wight ferries in the Emissions Trading Scheme, the ETS, as outrageous and quite insidious. The scheme, due to include ferry services from July, has been introduced as part of efforts to decarbonise the maritime sector. Routes in Scotland have been granted an exemption until 2030, while vessels in Northern Ireland have been given a 50% reduction. But any Isle of Wight ferries over 5,000 gross registered tonnes will be included. This will apply to Whitelinks, St Clair and Victoria of Wight vessels. The UK Chamber of Shipping has warned the policy could lead to fare increases of around 15%. Mr Holden said it's a tourism tax, but it's also something which directly affects everybody on the island, and it's specifically a tax on the Isle of Wight. It's absolutely outrageous, and it's also quite insidious. The idea that it comes in now just on the very biggest ferries. It will grow and grow. Down the line, I guarantee you, the hovercraft will be hit by it and the passenger ferry will be hit by it. The Shadow Transport Secretary said if the Conservatives were in power, the scheme would not be happening, and expressed concern over the impact of the government's fuel duty on the ferry companies. He said the party is concerned about the long-term implications for the ferry services and would come forward with a really thought-through and robust policy down the line. But it was important to face the immediate issues first. Mr. Holden said there will always be a debate over was it better when it was all nationalised under British Rail essentially and Sea-Link. I don't think anybody's particularly desperate to go back to that. I think what they do want to see is the government acting on their side, which means they want to see them actually have these committees set up and formed and informing the decision makers, which is clearly not the case at the moment. When asked on why the electorate should trust the Conservative Party again after they didn't address longer-term issues over the ferries in their 14 years in power, Mr. Holden said the criticism was fair, but praised Joe Robertson for consistently making the argument in Westminster. The Shadow Minister said, doggedly, in any debate on any subject, the Isle of Wight ferry comes in if Joe gets a chance. He doesn't talk about being on their side in an election campaign. He's been doing it ever since he was elected. Mr. Holden also praised the Conservative Council group for working together and pulling in the same direction. Mr. Robertson said, I'm not just bashing the government for the hell of it over this, we're trying to work with them. But so far, the only thing they've actually done is to introduce a tax on ferry transport. So we've been trying to reach out to the government, giving them every opportunity to do the right thing. They haven't, but there's still time.
Isle of Wight Aldi supermarket store to open in Ryde. A new Aldi store looks set to open on the Isle of Wight after County Hall planners granted the supermarket giant conditional permission. Plans for a new discount supermarket at Cothey Way in Ryde, as well as 12 electric vehicle charging stations, associated parking, landscaping and infrastructure work, received nearly 300 letters of support. A council officer report said the proposed development would use a vacant brownfield site, previously home to Newtrick UK, to provide 40 jobs in the retail industry. The approval comes after both the Nettlestone and Seaview and Ryde Town Councils objected to the proposal, voicing concern over issues including traffic, noise and light pollution, environmental and residential amenity impacts, and inadequate mitigation measures. A total of 16 third-party objections were filed with County Hall. The officer report for proposal 25/01012/FUL said the proposals would not result in any significant impacts on the viability or vitality of the town centre, highway safety, the amenities or neighbouring properties or the character of the area. The application would result in the loss of employment land, but officers are satisfied this would not impact on the local economy. The submitted details demonstrate that there would not impact on any high amenity trees or protected species, and biodiversity net gain could be achieved on site by enhanced landscaping. Consent comes with 18 conditions for reasons of legal and planning policy compliance, environmental and ecological protection, prevention of harm to human health, highway safety and maintenance, pedestrian safety, biodiversity net gain, the development having a satisfactory appearance, appropriate drainage and avoiding disturbance. Arguments for the new store with 288 supporting letters sent to the council, included improved competition, extra retail services and employment, traffic not significantly overwhelming the existing road network, and positively using redundant space. A previously submitted Nettlestone and Seaview Parish Council comment said, "The unresolved highways risks, the unacceptable likely burden on nearby residential communities, the environmental impacts, and the absence of a strategic infrastructure plan collectively make clear that the proposal is neither safe nor suitable for this location. The proposal continues to raise concerns about increased light pollution, noise, and general disturbance to nearby residents."
A popular Isle of Wight attraction welcomes 6 new forest donkeys. The Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary has welcomed 6 lovable new residents after a busy time preparing for the spring season, bringing a lively mix of character and charm to its Wroxall site. Leading the latest group is Pickle, a 10-month-old foal whose playful energy has already earned him a fan club among the staff. Pickle arrived with his mother Willow, who is taking his enthusiasm in her stride as he trots circles around her, testing the limits of his growing legs. Accompanying them are Lulu, Little Man, and the mother and daughter pair, Dilly and Maisie, all rehomed from the New Forest. Their exact histories are not fully known, but it is believed they once lived freely among the forest's heathland before becoming part of a larger group of 19 donkeys. As the group's owners grew older and found caring for such a sizable herd increasingly difficult, they made the difficult decision to rehome some of the animals. Familiar with the sanctuary and confident in its standard of care, they approached the team for help. After completing a period in quarantine, the new arrivals have now joined the main herd. They have been getting acquainted with the sanctuary's other recent additions, including Lucy, Tilly and Sunny Pony, an elderly mare from Ryde, whose gentle nature and steady pace seem to have made her an unofficial welcome committee. Their arrival brings the sanctuary's total population to 109 donkeys, 14 ponies, a mule and a horse, all of which receive lifelong care. Yard manager Sam Thornby said the team was delighted to introduce the latest group. Sam added that although the donkeys had not travelled far, staff were monitoring them closely as they settle into their new home and routines. "We look forward to welcoming visitors this Easter holidays and introducing them to our newest arrivals," said Sam. The sanctuary will run Easter activities until April the 12th, including an Easter egg trail, an egg decorating competition and free guided tours. Open all year round, the sanctuary is a much-loved part of island life and welcomes over 150,000 visitors annually, offering free entry and free parking.
Council statement after Isle of Wight teacher appears in court. The Isle of Wight Council has sought to reassure parents after a teacher at a special primary school appeared in court charged with assaulting a pupil. He pleaded not guilty to assault by beating. The alleged offence occurred on September 11, 2025, at a time when Mr. Halai was working as a teacher at Medina House School in Newport. In a statement sent to the county press following Mr. Halai's court appearance, a council spokesperson said, "The Isle of Wight Council is aware of an alleged incident that took place within an island school during September 2025. Since then, the Isle of Wight Council has worked closely with the school, including engagement with the local authority designated officer and human resources team. The member of staff has been suspended since the alleged incident, and this remains the case. The school remains committed to supporting all those affected, including pupils, families and staff, and to ensuring that all appropriate procedures are followed. As this is an ongoing matter, we are unable to comment further at this time. A trial date has been set for September the 3rd, 2026.
Isle of Wight woman reunites with New Jersey pen pal of 60 years. Two pen pals who live more than 3,000 miles away from one another and have been exchanging letters and messages for over 6 decades have met up for a very special birthday party. Veronica Giblin, 69, from Ventnor, and Nancy Coldreck, 69, from New Jersey in the USA, have been corresponding with one another since 1967. The pair, now best of friends, first met through their respective youth organisations, Nancy being with the Girl Scouts in America and Veronica being with the Girl Guides on the Isle of Wight. I went to America for her 21st birthday in 1977 and spent 2 or 3 weeks out there with her family, said Veronica. We'd never met before, so we didn't know if we were going to like each other, but luckily we hit it off straight away. We were the only two that carried on writing. I was actually with her in the Pocono Mountains when Elvis died. Nancy, who is godmother to Veronica's eldest daughter, came to the Isle of Wight for the christening in 1978. She returned 2 years later, but before that Veronica had travelled to America to be a bridesmaid at her wedding. It was all very exciting, said Veronica. I didn't see her again until around 2009 when Nancy's daughter got married and I went to America for the wedding. Then she came over for my daughter's wedding in 2010, and on that trip she stayed for 2 weeks, and we ended up getting stuck in France for 11 days when the Icelandic volcano blew up. In 2016, Veronica's partner, Steve Bridget, died, and the pair had planned to visit America. I told Nancy, I can't come, I can't do it. But in September, I told her I'd changed my mind, and that year we'd both hit 60. So we decided to do a skydive, said Veronica. Then we went to Scotland for 2 weeks in 2017, and in 2018 we went for a 3-week trip to Madagascar. We FaceTime regularly, but I hadn't seen her in person since. But my youngest daughter, Maria, told me I was going out with her at the weekend. But what I didn't know was that she'd called Nancy to ask if she could come over for my 70th birthday, and I had absolutely no idea she was coming. She's got to go home before my birthday on April the 1st, but she's here for the party. I was amazed and astonished. There were a few tears, and after that we were just laughing and hugging. It's amazing how close we are, even though we've lived apart all our lives. Veronica still has a suitcase of letters from Nancy in her loft and estimates the pair must have exchanged over 1,000 before they moved on to messaging. I used to get very excited when the letters came, said Veronica, and they were always several pages long.
Isle of Wight pub attack sees barmaid suffer cut to her neck. An abusive woman hurled a glass at an Isle of Wight pub bar, causing it to shatter and injure the barmaid who told her to leave. Joanne Primer of Mill Square, Wootton Bridge, appeared for sentencing at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Friday, March 27th. At an earlier hearing, she admitted inflicting actual bodily harm on a woman at the Prince of Wales pub Newport on July 29th last year, together with 4 counts of shoplifting from Tesco in Wootton. The court heard 52-year-old Primer and her partner had been drinking at the pub throughout the afternoon. A barmaid checking CCTV saw the pair apparently asleep on benches in the garden, and, unable to rouse them, she sought help from a customer. When she returned, Primer was standing, her shorts around her ankles, while her partner insisted they would leave only when they chose to, said Serena Edwards, prosecuting. When the barmaid warned she would call the police if they did not leave, the man got in her face, shouting at her, causing her to retreat inside the pub. As tensions rose, Prema began making threats to her. Although it appeared the couple were preparing to go, Prema suddenly launched her glass towards the bar, which shattered, sending shards flying. Pieces of broken glass hit the barmaid, cutting her neck, hands and arms. The wound to her neck bled, and she required treatment at St Mary's Hospital. Prema and her partner walked out immediately after the attack. When arrested, Prema admitted being responsible and said she felt terrible about injuring the woman. The court also heard she stole £27.60 worth of alcohol, snacks and confectionery from Tesco across 4 visits between October 9th and 23rd. None of the goods were recovered. For Prema, Brian McMonnis said the offences were out of character and rooted in alcohol misuse, following the catastrophic loss of a previous partner. Prema, who has bipolar disorder, was now engaging with inclusion. Magistrates imposed a 12-month community order, and Prema was told to pay £100 compensation to the victim and £27.60 to Tesco and £85 costs.
Freshwater Housing Plan refused after Heathfield Farm protest campaign. Residents who protested against the development of Heathfield Farm campsite, Freshwater, were celebrating this week after planning was refused for a proposed 60-home and large retail space. Only last month, around 40 people braved the elements by waving placards raising concerns that the development would cause irreversible environmental loss within the Isle of Wight's UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Local resident Julie Newell said, "This proposal raised serious concerns around ecological harm, particularly the impact on Heathfield Farm's resident red squirrels. The island is a safe haven for this declining species, and preserving their habitats is essential and central to the Isle of Wight's UNESCO Biosphere status. The site has been described as a haven for birds and small mammals, including barn owls, bats, newts, badgers and slowworms. The refusal sends a clear message that development must be environmentally responsible and that irreplaceable ecosystems can't be sacrificed for the sake of meeting housing targets. A huge thank you to all who've helped to safeguard this acclaimed conservation campsite." There were 89 public comments, with only 2 in support of the plans, and the application was opposed by local councillors and the parish council. A report citing the reasons the application was refused listed inadequate information on protected species and water drainage, impact on the Southampton Water and Solent Special Protection Area, and Colwell Bay Site of Special Scientific Interest, lack of local healthcare facilities, and agreement not reached on a financial contribution to the local rights of way.
New home share scheme launches on Isle of Wight. Older islanders could soon benefit from more company and support at home. A home share scheme has launched, pairing older adults with younger people who offer help and companionship in exchange for affordable accommodation. The scheme, run by Two Generations CIC, has been rolled out with support from the Isle of Wight Council and is already well established in other parts of the UK. Under the scheme, a householder with a spare room is carefully matched with a sharer who provides around 10 hours a week of practical support, such as cooking, shopping, and light household tasks. In return, the sharer receives affordable accommodation, helping to address high living costs while supporting another member of the community. Laura Gordian, Director of Adult Social Care and Housing at Isle of Wight Council, said, "We're delighted to support 2 generations in bringing the home share model to the Isle of Wight. Many older residents want to remain in the homes they love, but would benefit from a little extra support or company. Home share offers a safe, reassuring and community-minded solution, and we're pleased to be working with 2 generations to develop this option for island residents. The scheme is not a care or rental arrangement. Both parties pay a small monthly fee to 2 generations, which covers ongoing support and safeguarding. Sharers do not provide personal or medical care, and instead focus on companionship and light assistance that helps older people remain independent." Debbie Andre, councillor responsible for the Adult Social Care, Public Health and Housing Committee, said, "Home share is a wonderfully positive and innovative way of supporting older people in our communities. Many residents simply want the reassurance of having someone around and a bit of help with everyday tasks. And this scheme offers exactly that, safely, sensitively, and in a way that promotes independence. We're very pleased to see this model coming to the island and opening up new options for those who may benefit. The home share model also offers younger people affordable housing and a meaningful way to give back while building connections across generations."
Isle of Wight SEND plan delay leads to £2,500 fine. A 10-month delay in issuing a child's special educational needs and disabilities SEND plan has resulted in the Isle of Wight Council being fined £2,500. Fault-causing injustice was found by the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, LGSCO, after a father complained about delays by County Hall in assessing his child's special educational needs and issuing a related plan. The man, who has not been named, said his child missed a significant amount of education at a crucial stage in their schooling. A council spokesperson said County Hall is taking firm steps to strengthen its SEND processes, improve the timeliness and quality of assessments and reviews, and ensure better communication with families. An LGSCO report said the legal timescale for completing an education, health and care EHC needs assessment and issuing a final EHC plan is 20 weeks. An EHC plan is for children and young people aged up to 25 who need more support than is available via special educational needs support. It sets out educational, health and social needs and determines additional support to meet them. LGSCO said in this instance the process started on February the 5th, 2024, requiring the Council to issue the final plan by June the 24th, 2024. County Hall instead issued the plan on April the 23rd, 2025, a 10-month delay beyond legal timescales. There were significant waits in both the assessment process and the issue of the final plan, the watchdog concluded, and the local authority has agreed to remedy the injustice with a symbolic payment of £2,500 to the father and evidence of service improvements. LGSCO said some of the delay was due to the wait for educational psychology, EP, advice. The Council requested input from a psychologist on June the 4th, 2024, but the EP did not complete their report until October the 2nd, 2024, taking 120 days rather than the statutory 6 weeks. A Council spokesperson said, "The Isle of Wight Council accepts the findings of the LGSCO in this case and is committed to implementing all learning and actions arising from the decision. We recognise that in this instance, aspects of our statutory education, health and care plan, EHCP, processes did not operate as effectively or as promptly as they should have. This falls short of the standard we want for children and families on the island. We are taking firm steps to strengthen our SEND processes, improve the timeliness and quality of assessments and reviews, and ensure better communication with families. Our priority remains ensuring that every child and young person with special educational needs receives the right support at the right time, and we are fully committed to making the necessary improvements."
New domestic abuse service launched across Hampshire and Isle of Wight. A new domestic abuse service aimed at tackling harmful behaviour has been launched across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, backed by nearly £1 million of annual funding. The initiative has been introduced by Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones and is the first service of its kind to operate across both counties. Delivered by charity Hampton Trust, the programme focuses on early intervention and supporting people responsible for abuse while keeping victims and survivors at the centre. Known as the Domestic Abuse Service for People Causing Harm, it includes the introduction of specialist domestic abuse navigators who will provide tailored, trauma-informed support. Donna Jones said, "Early intervention is key," adding that domestic abuse can have devastating and long-lasting effects on victims and families. She said many perpetrators face additional challenges, such as mental health issues or substance misuse, and that understanding those factors is vital in helping people change their behaviour. Figures from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary show more than 26,000 domestic abuse-related crimes were recorded across the area in 2024. The new service is free, confidential and open not only to those causing harm, but also to victims, as well as concerned friends, family members and professionals. Chief Executive of Hampton Trust, Chantal Hughes, said, "The investment marks a big step forward, allowing support to be tailored to each individual's circumstances." She said some people may need help with issues like mental health or addiction before engaging in behaviour change programs, while for others, family relationships can be the motivation for change. The scheme brings together existing services into one system, offering clearer and more accessible support following referral. The Police and Crime Commissioner is working in partnership with Isle of Wight Council, Hampshire County Council, Portsmouth City Council, Southampton City Council and Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary. Kate Harvey, Director of Public Health for the Isle of Wight, said tackling abusive behaviour is a key part of preventing further harm and improving outcomes for families and communities. She added the programme will help strengthen efforts to address the root causes of abuse while supporting safer, healthier lives. Leaders in Portsmouth and Southampton have also welcomed the move, saying it will help improve safety, reduce risk, and support people to change harmful behaviours. The service is now available across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight.
Major emergency response to riverbank situation in central Newport. A plethora of emergency vehicles descended on central Newport on Wednesday evening in response to a developing situation in which a male is threatening to jump into a river. 3 Coast Guard rescue teams from Bembridge, Ventnor and the Needles are on scene near Liddell, alongside numerous police officers and multiple resources from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. Island Echo understands that an individual is situated on a low bridge over the River Medina outside the Medina Railway Pub. Efforts are underway to bring about a safe resolution to the incident. It is the second deployment for the Isle of Wight's emergency services this evening alone, with all 3 Coast Guard teams and the fire service responding to Newport from another incident in Binstead. It is understood that a male was rescued and handed into the care of the Isle of Wight Ambulance Service. And there's an update to this story at 22:05 saying the incident has been resolved, with emergency services now standing down.
Isle of Wight flats could replace Ryde Brownfield site. A block of 5 apartments may be built on an Isle of Wight town centre site, currently attracting antisocial behaviour. Ian and Carol Hudson have applied for planning permission to construct a building with 3 2-bedroom flats and a further 2 1-bedroom units on brownfield land behind 13 Union Street in Ryde. Proposals, which also include landscaping, serve to meet some of the identified need for additional houses across the island, a statement from Craig Soutar Architecture and Phil Salmon Planning said. The site currently attracts antisocial behaviour given its relatively secluded position, it said. A narrow pedestrian link from Union Street has been used by unlawful drug takers, which can be a constant menace to local residents. The apartment block is proposed to be a 3-storey structure designed in a traditional architectural style, thus being sympathetic and in context with what is presently existing in the area. Public transport links for residents, as well as connections and footpaths to local facilities, were also cited in the document. County Hall's public consultation on application 26/00274/FUL is live until May the 1st, and a decision has been scheduled for May 25th.
Now we go on to some Wight memories. And on this day, 70 years ago, escaped prisoners were found living in a disused station. 2 escaped Camp Hill prisoners were dramatically recaptured after turning a disused railway station into a makeshift home on the 1st of April 1956, 70 years ago yesterday. What might have been a short-lived dash for freedom instead became an oddly domestic episode played out inside one of the island's abandoned buildings. Quinton Phillips and Peter Larkham Smith, both serving 4 years corrective training for office, store and garage breaking and larceny, had escaped Camp Hill prison by squeezing through a small workshop toilet window before scaling the outer wall at its lowest point. Phillips, no stranger to the area, had previously been stationed at Albany Barracks during his military service and had married a local woman who later divorced him upon discovering his criminal past. In a twist of timing, his escape came just a day after his ex-wife had returned to Newport on holiday. Rather than attempting an immediate getaway from the island, the pair lingered. The night before their capture, they broke into Medina Cinema, helping themselves to tinned food, chocolate and crisps, before leaving with a haul of more than 2,000 cigarettes. Their chosen refuge was the disused Carisbrooke railway station, which had stood empty since the line's closure over 2 years earlier. Inside, the fugitives set about transforming the derelict building into something resembling a temporary home. Furniture was rearranged, lino and carpet repositioned, and a small fire lit to keep out the early spring chill. Supplies from the cinema break-in were stockpiled, with chocolate, torches, and thousands of cigarettes scattered among their improvised living quarters. It was this unlikely occupation of the station that ultimately led to their downfall. Detective Inspector Toms, methodically searching empty properties around Newport, made his way to the abandoned station. As officers closed in, P.C. Barton spotted Phillips attempting to escape and brought him down with what was described as a flying rugby tackle on the platform after he leapt through a waiting room window. Meanwhile, Detective Constable Riley entered through a rear window and recaptured Smith without resistance. The pair's brief experiment in turning a forgotten railway station into a hideout came to an abrupt end, and both men were returned to the custody of prison authorities.
Remembering flooding in Newport back in 1960, an article by Alan Stroud of the County Press. Water's been in the news lately. Either there's not been enough or there's been too much. There was too much in Newport one Saturday morning in October 1960, when most of the lower High Street area disappeared under several feet of water for a few hours. The previous night there'd been a freak cloudburst in the small hours, and by daybreak an estimated 500 million gallons of rainwater was making its way from surrounding hills down into Newport. Unfortunately, when it got there, it met a high spring tide that was coming up the Medina from the opposite direction. The two bodies of water met in the harbour, and in a matter of minutes the water level rose nearly 3 feet, causing the streets from C Street to Coppins Bridge to disappear under water. The county press reported, at Shide, where the river flow was usually 6 cubic feet a second, the recording equipment showed a flow of over 150 cubic feet. Shortly after, the equipment was overwhelmed and the needle ran off the chart. The flood was short-lived. With the turn of the tide, the water levels quickly fell, and by 2 p.m. the flood had completely receded. Narrow bridges and culverts, inadequate sluice gates, and disused mill wheels on both the Medina and the Lukeley were blamed by some, but it was generally agreed that the flood had not been preventable. To avoid a repeat, the Council and Water Board decided that the river should be canalised, an ugly word for what some would say was an ugly end result. For hundreds of years, the Medina had made its unspoilt way through the town centre, but the canalisation brought all that to an end. The pretty grass slopes leading to the water's edge were replaced by stark concrete riverbanks, still with us today. The end result is that apart from the excellent Towngate Pond redevelopment, a pretty river that could be a major feature for Newport passes through the town, largely hidden from view. Many photos were taken by Reg Davies, a lovely man who was a conductor on Southern Vectis. Reg took a camera everywhere with him, and has left behind him a wonderful collection of local interest photos.
Now we move on to what's on, and there are 7 Isle of Wight Easter egg hunts for a fun family day out. The Isle of Wight Steam Railway is hosting egg hunts until April the 12th. Robin Hill are having an Easter egg dash on the Easter Sunday and Easter Monday, starting at 12 o'clock. Brading Roman Villa is having an Easter egg hunt and various other things on April the 16th, and is in aid of Daisy Chain's Isle of Wight. That's from 11:30 to 3:30. English Heritage, Osborne House and Carisbrooke Castle, both hosting Easter events in the school holidays up until April the 19th. Mottiston Gardens, they're having a traditional Easter fair and egg hunt from Thursday, April the 2nd to Monday, April the 6th, 10:30 to 5. And Wild Heart Animal Sanctuary, the zoo, family fun is to be had there up until April the 12th. All day, I think that is. The Classic Boat Museum in Cowes. Families will have the chance to enjoy some Easter-themed fun as well as discovering maritime heritage. Events taking place on Good Friday, Easter Saturday and Easter Monday from 11 till 3. The museum is closed on Easter Sunday.
National Gallery Art Trail, including Van Gogh, will be coming to Newport. This trail is set to brighten the streets of Newport and will include Van Gogh's Sunflowers. Newport will host the National Gallery's Art on Your Doorstep project from May the 6th to October the 30th, bringing life-size, outdoor reproductions of iconic works to the town in a free public art trail. Julie Jones-Evans, councillor responsible for the Economy, Regeneration, Transport and Infrastructure Committee, said, "We're extremely excited to welcome Art on Your Doorstep to Newport, being one of just 4 locations across the UK to host a trail this year. We hope the trail encourages you to get out and explore our historic town, and we can't wait to see these iconic masterpieces woven into the everyday lives of our residents and visitors for the next few months. The 18 artworks will form a 1-mile route through Newport's heritage sites, town centre, historic squares and harbour side. The trail has been secured by Isle of Wight Council through the Shaping Newport Partnership, which also includes Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council and Newport Business Association. Each piece on the trail has been chosen by community groups and a school to reflect the character and setting of its location. Prominent works will include the Water Lily Pond by Monet at 64 High Street, Van Gogh's Sunflowers on Castlehold Lane, and The Fighting Temeraire by Turner at the Harbour Office on Town Quay. Other featured artists include Gustave Klimt, Pierre-Auguste Renoir and Edouard Manet. A full map of the trail will be released closer to the launch. The project forms part of the National Gallery's wider goal to bring art to communities across the United Kingdom over the next 3 years.
Easter waste and recycling collections to continue as normal. Household waste and recycling collections across the Isle of Wight will continue as normal over the Easter weekend, including Good Friday and Easter Monday, with no changes to scheduled services. Recycling centres will remain open, but advanced booking is required to help manage traffic and keep sites running efficiently. Bulky waste and refuse collections will also operate as usual. Residents are being encouraged to reduce waste over Easter, as around 90 million Easter eggs are consumed in the UK each year, creating an estimated 8,000 tonnes of packaging. Tips for a greener Easter include recycling packaging correctly, choosing products with less plastic, reusing decorations, and composting food waste where possible. And now it's time to say goodbye and a very happy Easter to everyone from Lynn.
And also I wish everyone a very happy Easter from John. The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that.
Hello, it's money and motors on the agenda today. Later, we're going to be looking at changes, some would say cuts, to the scheme which allows some visually impaired people to use their benefits to lease a car. But first, as the number of payments that we make these days seem to be requiring ever more bits of plastic as options to using cash diminish, how do those of us with some or no sight distinguish between them all? Well, we know how resourceful blind and partially sighted people are, but it is still a bit of a faff. But now it seems that the finance industry is trying to help. Led by UK Finance, there is now a set of guidelines just launched and which 80% of the industry has signed up for to help people identify the differences between cards, say between debit and credit cards, and for those with some sight to read more easily the information on those cards. Well, I'm joined by Adam Scarrett, Director of Payments for UK Finance. Adam, first of all, tell me more about the thinking behind this initiative.
It's all about making sure that you can recognise one card type from another. So particularly if you've got, say, a debit card and a credit card from the same bank, the code requires that the colour of those cards must be different. That's one easy recognisable feature. Then on the reverse of the card, and that's where some banks have your account number or your credit card number, it will have your 3-digit code, it will have your name, for example. And so we've got minimum font size requirements. So some bank cards have very small text on the back. And what we're trying to do is change that and make it more uniform across the industry. So larger font sizes, there's minimum contrast ratios. It's got to be a matte design so it doesn't shine and you can't see. So basically the idea is that you should be able to, on the reverse of your card, really see your number a lot more clearly, the contact number you need to call, what your security code is. So all those details should be standardised across those who issue these accessible cards.
It's not compulsory, this though, is it?
No, it's not. It's not compulsory or mandatory. This is a voluntary code. But on our website, we've listed all the banks who are signing up and which parts of their banks are signing up and which ones aren't. So it should be very clear to customers in due course whether their bank is going to be signing up or not. But we've got really good take-up voluntarily by the industry. So I think it doesn't really matter so much whether it's mandatory because most of the industry is taking this up.
Right. Now, there are some characteristics designed specifically to help people who have no sight distinguish by touch debit and credit cards and also other kinds of payment cards. Can you explain what those are and what you're going to do there?
Yeah, absolutely. And the two things that the RNIB really told us is that the most important thing for blind people is to be able to tell a bank card from any other type of card, such as a library card. And then secondly, to distinguish between a debit card and a credit card. So the tactile design is principally around curved notches and square notches, but there are 3 different types of notches, and this has come out from the MasterCard touch card system, which we've adopted. So we have a curved notch for debit cards, we have kind of a rectangular square notch for credit cards, and other cards like prepaid cards or savings or cash card ATM cards, they'll be adopting a triangular notch. So if you run your finger down the short side of the card, you should be able to distinguish between them. And it's a relatively new thing because the flat cards haven't been around for that many years, whereas the embossed cards were. So you might say within the card industry that we had a tactile design in embossed cards, but I don't think everyone really thought about embossed cards being tactile and being accessible. It's when they start to get replaced that you begin to realise that, oh, actually, we need to look at this design again. And that's why we've stepped in and to make sure that new types of cards, new types of designs actually have accessibility built in.
So what's the timing on this, Adam? When will these cards be available?
Some banks very soon, but all of them by the end of June 2027.
Right. Now, I think a lot of people will welcome these innovations, but I have to tell you that this is something we don't get all that many complaints about. No comparison between that and what we do hear constantly about, the inability to pay privately and without embarrassment in shops, pubs, restaurants, in which more and more of them have flat screens on which the less sight you have, the harder it is to insert your PIN number when demanded. Now, guidelines were issued by UK Finance on how companies should address this problem back in 2022. Those guidelines pointed out that companies not providing a way for people to submit their PIN numbers privately were almost certainly in breach of the law, and yet still we wait for a solution. Why?
That's a really interesting question, and I wish I had a quick answer. To go back to the cards, the reason why we've started that is because we had kind of more control over that. Banks, issuing companies, they're our direct members. The terminal situation is very different because then you're talking about an intersection between the retailers, what we call merchants, and the people who manufacture those terminals, and we don't have any kind of control or association with the manufacturers. So that's why it's taking time, I think, from our perspective. So what we're trying to do is to use our influence to make contact with the manufacturers. So one of the things we've just started to work on is to actually forge a partnership with the European Blind Union. And in Europe, as you may know, there is legislation called the European Accessibility Act, and that actually specifically mentions payment terminals. And we're going to be working with the European Blind Union, hopefully RNB also. There's going to be a working group set up actually in the coming weeks where the manufacturers are going to be in the room, and there's some objectives that we're trying to achieve.
Now, you may remember that when we discussed this on the programme a year ago, we had Steve Tyler on talking about a solution which his consortium Talucard would use apps and fingerprint technology. Now, they say they're really ready to talk about this and they'd love to talk to you. Do you want to talk to them?
We are in contact with them, and we actually ran a conference last year and they were on the platform with us and Lord Holmes. So we certainly have a relationship with them. The solution looks like a good one, and our code, we've designed our code so that they can still fit within that as well, even if they can't make the notches because of manufacturing reasons. But we're looking to support them. So I'm more than happy to receive any information from Talucard and put that forward to the banks in due course.
Yeah, because I mean, they are very keen to talk to you. I think almost ready is probably accurate, but you know, I can't stress enough how much this is still upsetting people. Do you think we are going to crack this problem?
I think we need to be ambitious. I don't want to overpromise though, and I think it will still take time, just being realistic. The work on payment terminals we're looking at would include things like more audio prompts. So when you're at the till, you've got more confidence in what you're paying. So the machine will tell you how much you have to pay and tell you to enter PIN or tell you if the transaction has succeeded or not. But I think the really most important thing is that not many till staff actually know these things have reasonable accessibility modes, and very few blind and partially sighted people know that they have them. So I think there's some improvements we can make and standardising, but I think what's really most important is actually making sure that the till staff themselves are properly trained. And we've been in contact with some of the retailer organisations such as the BRC, the British Retail Consortium, and they're happy to partner with us on this. And we've been talking to RNIB about the need for some common training materials that can be available either in a kind of a YouTube or accessible format to make people feel comfortable that either they can operate the actions themselves, which would be the ideal scenario, or to ask the till staff to operate and how these things should be working for them. So I think that's one of the simpler things that we can do, and one of the things we'll be working on in terms of recommendations later this year.
Adam Scarrett, thank you very much indeed. And by the way, listeners often get in touch with us asking why we don't talk more about the issue of touchscreen card machines on the programme. Believe me, we often do, but there are limits to what we can actually achieve by talking about it, and we don't have the power to force change, only to get the issue publicly discussed. but I can promise you this is not the last you'll hear about this from us. Meanwhile, we're also hearing from you about changes to the Motability scheme. Now, Motability started getting on for 50 years ago in order to help severely physically disabled people with getting around. But subsequently, it was extended to visually impaired people who qualified for the higher mobility component, originally of the Disability Living Allowance, since covered by PIP or personal independence payments. Now, this enables visually impaired people to lease a car for their use with up to 2 nominated drivers. But tax changes in the past autumn budget have led to changes in entitlement due to come into force in July. Nigel Fletcher is CEO of the Motability Foundation. Nigel, just explain, first of all, what these changes are and the reasons behind making them.
Well, Peter, we've had to make some incredibly difficult decisions over the past few months in response to the government deciding to apply taxes to the scheme customers, to Motability scheme customers, to the tune of £300 million. Customers have overwhelmingly told us they can't afford those taxes in the price of their vehicles, so that we've had to spread those taxes across different proposition changes across the scheme. So to answer your question, we've had to unfortunately reduce the mileage provision under each lease from 20,000 miles a year down to 10,000 miles a year. We've then also reduced the number of tyres that you can get replaced on your Motability car for the duration of the lease down to 6 tyres. And we've also had to introduce a charge to take the car to European countries. So some changes that we've had to make to the scheme that we share concern about, that we really aren't ideal and are quite difficult for customers to accommodate.
So from customers' point of view, what this means is less value for the money that their benefits was giving them.
Absolutely. Customers of the Motability scheme are now passing £300 million to the Treasury through an additional tax revenue.
There are some different arrangements for Scotland, I believe, in terms of eligibility anyway.
There's different arrangements. Scotland has a different benefit system. Social Security Scotland is a devolved power. The Motability scheme is the same in Scotland as the rest of the UK currently, and we're currently working through what that means for Scottish customers at the moment.
Now, what about people who have a current agreement? Are they affected by this?
No, they're not affected at all, Peter. If a customer currently has a car in an existing lease, then nothing will change until the end of that lease.
Yeah, but as you say, at the end of the lease, presumably when they renew a lease or take on a new one, they will then be affected in the same way.
Unfortunately, that is the case, yes, Peter.
But from the customer's point of view, could Motability not have absorbed some of these changes? You are quite a well-resourced organisation.
We are a large organisation. We've got a lot of customers and we're really proud of the scheme and the amount that it's grown by and the number of people that we are helping. That is 100% true. In terms of the ability of the scheme to absorb any of those tax increases, unfortunately not. Motability Operations that runs the scheme has made losses in the last 2 financial years. And that's really because the cost of motoring is increasing all of the time. And the EV transition and the rate at which the UK market is transitioning to EVs is also a difficult transition for the business to accommodate as well.
Well, one of the people who got in touch with us about this is Julian Malins. He brought these changes to our attention. Julian, I mean, first of all, just explain your own situation with your Motability lease.
Well, my lease at the moment, Peter, is about halfway through. I chose my car based on the ability to get my guide dog easily in the back. So I was slightly taken aback earlier in the year when Motability withdrew certain models. I thought that was quite an arbitrary step. And it seemed to me that they were reacting to social media pressure rather than anything else. So I'd like to ask Nigel about that. And
well, can I just ask you about it before you ask Nigel? When you say social media, you mean people suggesting that disabled people would
the press or the public didn't really understand how the Motability scheme worked, and had this impression that people were driving around in very expensive cars on the public purse, as it were. that's obviously wrong.
Yeah, and so explain the situation as far as you're concerned, because what you feel is this affects your ability to choose the car that you
Exactly.
need for justifiable reasons.
I think so. I don't think people without a disability would accept the idea that somebody else should make that choice for them. I think we should be able to choose whatever model's available, and just deciding that certain models are, perhaps the optics aren't good or something, shouldn't be available. That doesn't seem right to me, to reduce that choice in a sort of very arbitrary way without any consultation. And obviously the changes that are being brought in now, the extra cost, I can see that Motability are struggling with that, but that should be, highlighted as well, that that's obviously an extra tax on disabled people.
So what specifically would you like to put to Nigel about this?
First, Nigel, I'd like to ask how this decision to reduce the availability of different models came about and whether that's was the right thing to do. And secondly, what are you doing to push back on this decision to introduce these taxes?
On the availability of models, you'll probably know that models have come on and off of the scheme throughout its history. It actually started off as a scheme just for British-made vehicles, and it migrated onto a full range in the 1980s, I think it was. And that was a good decision because, as you quite rightly say, why shouldn't disabled people like ourselves have the full range of choice available through the Motability scheme? That decision that my board, the Motability Foundation board, made before the budget in the autumn was very much centred around really trying to take a lot of care of the reputation of the scheme, and also really looking at the range of vehicles that are available on the scheme with the different features and availability of size models and different features that we know are really important to disabled people, whether that's door openings, the availability of heated seats, heated steering wheels. All of these things might seem luxury items to anyone who isn't disabled, but are really important to some disabilities. In your case, I think probably the size and accessibility of the boot is probably really important for an assistance dog. But we are also satisfied that the current range of vehicles on the scheme is really broad, and it does match a lot of those needs that disabled people have. So not an easy decision, I have to admit, but it was the right decision at the time.
Nigel, specifically, just to follow up, I mean, the Motability makes grants in particular cases. Do you think this kind of problem that Julian is drawing attention to could attract maybe some financial help to mitigate it?
There's certainly going to be a lot of customers, I think, in Julian's position. In terms of the changes that we're having to make, unfortunately, to the scheme, 3 in 4 customers won't be affected, 3 in 4, because we know the average mileage on a car is 7,500 compared to the 10,000 new limit. So the vast majority of people aren't going to be affected. We do run grant programmes at the Motability Foundation at the moment across a whole range of different needs for disabled people. As a charity, we're still spending 650 million through to 2030 on our grant programmes, and those grant programmes will still be open and available to people. We are going to have to make some changes to our grant programmes to accommodate the changes to the scheme, but we'll still be spending the same amount of money. So yes, Peter, I think some people will need some help.
And just to go back to you, Julian, I think you said you're about halfway through your lease. I mean, will you be renewing?
Well, certainly, I hope to. We'll take a close look at it, though, and it really just depends on how expensive it becomes. If it becomes very expensive, then it becomes less attractive as a proposition.
OK. Well, Julian, thanks for contacting us. And Nigel Fletcher, CEO of the Motability Foundation, thank you both very much. Just one more thing we'd like your help with before we go. We're planning a new occasional series based on practical aspects of day-to-day life, where visually impaired listeners can share their favourite hints and tips with others. It's National Gardening Week this week, so we're pleased to say the first in our series will cover gardening. We'd like to hear from visually impaired gardeners with their favourite workarounds, just practical ways of cheating the bad sight fairy. Anything from planting, seeding, mowing the lawn in a straight line. You can call and leave us a message on 0161836 1338, or you can email in touch at bbc.co.uk. From me, Peter White, and producer Beth Hemmings, goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips News, week commencing 6th of April. Newport area, 8 Albert Street.
Ryde area, 141 High Street, 95 George Street, 10 and 11 High Street. Ryde area skips, 84 Howgate Road, Bembridge.
Cowes and East Cowes area, the Portland Inn, Worsley Road, Gurnard, number 1, July Cottage, Bars Hill. Cowes area skips, 18 Albert Street.
Ventnor area, Ventnor Youth Centre, Victoria Street.
Sandown area, 52 Fitzroy Street. Alverstone Farmhouse, Main Road, Alverstone. Napoleon Landing, Esplanade. And 13 Station Avenue. Sandown area skips, 29 Alfred Road, Lake.